Rain hammered the glass like fists demanding entry. Inside Rossi's, Manhattan's temple of old money and older secrets, Megan Vale watched burgundy wine bleed across white linen while her husband's fingers crushed bone beneath the table. To the room, they looked like wealth incarnate. To her, this was just another Tuesday in hell. But then she saw him, a stranger in black silk whose eyes cut through every lie she'd built around herself. When Ethan left for the restroom, the stranger slid a card across her table without a word. "Call when you're ready to disappear," he said. She didn't know Lucien Moretti was the most dangerous man in New York. She only knew that for the first time in years, someone looked at her like she deserved saving. 3 days later, bleeding on her bathroom floor, while Ethan screamed outside the door, she'd make the call that would either kill her or set her free. If you want to see how far Megan's choice takes her, stay until the end. And drop a like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain started hours before Ethan decided they were going to Rossi's. Megan stood in their bedroom, his bedroom where she happened to sleep, watching water streak down floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Fifth Avenue. 27 years old, and she couldn't remember the last time she'd chosen her own clothes. The black dress laid out on the bed wasn't a suggestion. The Cartier necklace beside it wasn't a gift. They were instructions, same as the heels, same as the lipstick shade he'd selected that morning before leaving for work. She picked up the dress. Silk. Probably cost more than most people made in a month. It felt like wearing someone else's skin. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Reservation at 8. Don't be late. Wear your hair down. No, please. No question mark. Just commands dressed up as communication." Megan deleted the message and started getting ready, her hands moving through the motions she'd perfected over 3 years of marriage. Foundation to cover the fading bruise on her collarbone. Concealer under her eyes where sleep had stopped visiting months ago. Hair straightened, sprayed, shaped into the version of herself that made Ethan smile for cameras and colleagues. The bathroom mirror reflected someone she didn't recognize anymore. She used to have opinions, used to laugh loud enough that people turned to look, used to stay up until 3 in the morning reading novels in French just because she could. Her parents, both literature professors who'd died in a car accident her senior year of college, had raised her to think critically, speak freely, exist loudly. Ethan had spent 3 years teaching her to do the opposite. "You're too sensitive. You're remembering it wrong. Nobody else sees it that way. I'm trying to help you. Why do you always make me the bad guy?" The words had worked better than chains. By the time his hands started leaving marks, Megan had already been trained not to trust her own reality. She finished her makeup and checked the time. 7:15. Ethan would be home soon, already irritated about something that happened at work, already looking for ways to remind her that everything she had, this apartment, her credit cards, her phone, her existence, belonged to him. The front door opened with the particular heaviness that meant he was in a mood. "Megan?" His voice carried that edge, the one that made her stomach clench. "Getting ready?" she called back, forcing brightness into her tone. "Almost done." She heard him moving through the apartment, probably pouring whiskey, definitely running through the list of things she'd failed to do correctly today. The wrong brand of coffee, the dry cleaning she forgot to pick up, the text she took too long to answer. Ethan appeared in the bathroom doorway. 41. Handsome in the way powerful men often are. Sharp jaw, expensive haircut, eyes that could switch from warm to glacial in a heartbeat. He wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit that probably cost $6,000. Behind him, the apartment stretched out like a museum. Sterile, beautiful, cold. He looked her over the way you'd inspect livestock. "The dress fits well," he said. "Not you look beautiful. Just observation, assessment. We're meeting the Harrisons tonight. Victor's considering me for senior partner. I need you to be charming." "Of course," Megan said. Her reflection smiled in the mirror. The woman behind her eyes stayed silent. "And Megan?" Ethan stepped closer. His hand found the back of her neck, thumb pressing against her spine, just hard enough to be a warning. "Don't drink too much. Last month you embarrassed me at the Chen dinner." She'd had 2 glasses of wine, had laughed at someone's joke. Ethan decided it was too loud. "I won't," she whispered. His grip tightened briefly, a promise, not a threat, then released. "Good girl. Car's downstairs in 20 minutes. He left. Megan gripped the marble counter until her knuckles went white, counting breaths the way her therapist had taught her before Ethan decided therapy was making her paranoid and cut off her access to the insurance cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. At breath 7, she opened her eyes and finished getting ready. Rossi's occupied the ground floor of a building older than the stock market crash. All dark wood and brass fixtures and waiters who moved like they'd signed NDAs. The clientele didn't just have money, they had the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Old families, new empires, the type of people who owned senators the way other people owned summer homes. Ethan guided Megan through the entrance with a hand on her lower back that looked affectionate but pressed hard enough to steer. The maitre d' recognized him immediately. "Mr. Mercer, wonderful to see you. Your table is ready." They were led to a corner booth with a view of the rain-soaked street. Soft jazz played beneath the murmur of conversations worth millions. Crystal caught candlelight and threw it back in fractured rainbows. Megan slid into her seat, arranging her face into the pleasant mask she wore in public. Ethan ordered for both of them without asking what she wanted. She'd stopped expecting him to ask years ago. "The Harrisons will be here in 15 minutes, Ethan said, checking his Patek Philippe. "Victor's wife is a gossip. Be friendly, but don't tell her anything real. And for fuck's sake, don't mention your parents again. Nobody wants to hear about dead professors." The words landed like a backhand. Megan's parents had been her entire world, brilliant, loving, chaotic, in the way academics often are. Their deaths had shattered something inside her that hadn't fully healed when she met Ethan 6 months later. He'd seemed safe then. Stable. The kind of man who could hold the broken pieces of her together. She hadn't realized he was just collecting the pieces so she'd be too scattered to leave. "I won't bring them up," she said quietly. Ethan's expression softened into something almost approximating affection. He reached across the table and took her hand, thumb rubbing small circles on her wrist. To anyone watching, it looked tender. His grip was just tight enough to bruise. "I know I'm hard on you sometimes," he said, voice low and intimate. "But it's because I care. You don't always see how the world works, Megan. People take advantage of women like you. Soft, naive, too trusting. I'm protecting you." There it was. The poison wrapped in concern. The abuse dressed up as devotion. "I know," Megan whispered, because disagreeing would cost her more than agreeing ever would. The waiter arrived with wine. Ethan ordered an expensive Bordeaux, made a show of testing it, approved with the kind of casual arrogance that came from never being told no. He poured Megan's glass 3/4 full, a test maybe, or a trap, and watched her like a scientist observing a rat in a maze. She took the smallest sip possible. The Harrisons arrived in a cloud of expensive perfume and corporate ambition. Victor was 60, silver-haired, the kind of lawyer who defended white-collar criminals and slept soundly afterward. His wife Claire wore diamonds that could fund a small country and a smile that never reached her eyes. "Ethan!" Victor clapped him on the shoulder. "Good to see you, and this must be Megan. I've heard so much about you." Megan shook his hand, murmured the appropriate pleasantries, slipped into the role of perfect wife, like putting on armor. She laughed at Victor's jokes, complimented Claire's earrings, asked about their daughter's wedding, said nothing of substance, revealed nothing real, existed as a beautiful accessory to Ethan's ambition. Beneath the table, Ethan's hand found her thigh, squeezed, a reminder that she was performing well. Dinner arrived. The conversation flowed around her like water around a stone. Talk of mergers, acquisitions, legal strategies that skirted the edge of ethical. Megan ate her halibut and smiled and felt herself disappearing bite by bite. Then she noticed the man at the next table. He sat alone, which was unusual for Rossi's. Most diners came in pairs or packs, networking over filet mignon and insider trading tips. But this man occupied his table the way predators occupy territory, silent, still, absolutely present. He wore black. Not the safe black of corporate America, but something darker. A silk shirt open at the collar, no tie, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms marked with scars that looked like they had stories. Silver rings on 3 fingers. Dark hair pushed back from a face that was all angles and shadows, and the kind of beauty that came with a warning label. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Dark, cold, and fixed directly on her with the intensity of someone reading a book, written in a language only he understood. Megan looked away quickly, heart hammering. She reached for her wine glass and missed, knocking it over instead. Burgundy spread across white linen like arterial spray. Shit! She grabbed her napkin, trying to stop the flow. Ethan's hand clamped on her wrist under the table, fingers digging into bone. His smile never wavered. "It's fine, darling." His voice was honey over gravel. "Just a little accident." But his grip said, "You'll pay for this later." The waiter rushed over with fresh linens. Claire made sympathetic noises. Victor launched into a story about a worse spill at some charity gala. The moment passed, except the man in black was still watching. Megan felt his gaze like heat on her skin. She didn't look back, couldn't risk it with Ethan's fingers still crushing her wrist, but she was aware of him the way you're aware of storm clouds gathering overhead. Ethan released her wrist to shake Victor's hand, sealing some deal they'd apparently made over dessert. The pressure vanished, but the ache remained. "I need the restroom," Ethan announced, standing. He leaned down, lips brushing Megan's ear. "Don't embarrass me again." He walked away. Claire immediately leaned in, launching into gossip about someone's daughter's divorce. Victor checked his phone, and the man in black stood up. He moved like smoke, crossing the space between tables with the kind of grace that came from a life where hesitation meant death. He stopped beside Megan's chair. Up close, he was even more unsettling, not because he was threatening, though there was danger in every line of him, but because he looked at her like he could see straight through the performance to the terrified woman underneath. "Excuse the interruption," he said. His voice was low, accented with something European that she couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe. "I couldn't help but notice you might need this." He placed a black business card on the table beside her water glass. "Matte finish, no logo. Just a phone number embossed in silver." "I don't—" Megan started. "You don't need it now," he interrupted gently. "But when you do, call." Claire had gone silent, watching with the wide-eyed fascination of someone witnessing something they'd gossip about for weeks. Victor looked up from his phone, frowning. The man ignored them both. He held Megan's gaze for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours, and in that moment she understood with crystal clarity. He knew. Not the details, not the specifics, but he recognized what she'd become, saw the bruises hidden beneath expensive fabric, understood the weight of survival she carried in her locked jaw and careful words. "Whenever you decide you want out," he said quietly. "Call me." Then he walked away. Megan stared at the card like it might explode. Her hands trembled, her pulse hammered in her throat. "Well," Claire said, fanning herself dramatically. "That was inappropriate," Victor finished, voice hard. "Who the hell does he think he is?" But Megan barely heard them. She picked up the card with shaking fingers and slid it into her clutch before Ethan returned. The man was already gone, his table empty. No trace he'd ever been there except the piece of paper burning a hole through her purse and the strange, terrifying feeling blooming in her chest. Hope. Ethan was silent on the drive home. That was worse than yelling. Megan sat in the back of the town car, watching rain stream across tinted windows, and tried to read his mood. He stared at his phone, jaw tight, scrolling through emails with the kind of focused intensity that meant someone had pissed him off. The car pulled up to their building. The doorman rushed out with an umbrella. Ethan didn't wait for him, just strode into the lobby with Megan trailing behind like a shadow. The elevator ride lasted 43 seconds. She counted every one. They entered the apartment. Ethan tossed his keys on the entry table hard enough to make them skitter. Who was he? Megan's stomach dropped. Who? Don't play stupid. Ethan turned to face her, and there it was, the thing he hid from the world. Rage, pure and simple and terrifying. The man who gave you his number at dinner. I don't know, Megan said truthfully. He just what? Decided you looked like you needed saving? Ethan laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. Let me guess, you smiled at him earlier, gave him the wrong impression, made him think you were available. I didn't. Where's the card? What? The business card he gave you. Where is it? Megan's mind raced. I threw it away. At the restaurant. I didn't want... Ethan's hand shot out and grabbed her purse, yanking it from her shoulder hard enough to break the strap. He dumped the contents on the marble floor. Lipstick, compact, wallet, keys, the black card. He picked it up, studied it. His expression went from angry to something much worse. "No name," he said softly. "Just a number." "You know what kind of man gives a married woman a card like this, Megan?" She stayed silent. "The kind who thinks he can take what belongs to someone else." Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. "The kind who thinks you're weak enough to need rescuing." "I'm not—" "You're not what?" He stepped closer. "Not thinking about calling him? Not wondering what would happen if you did? Not already planning how to betray me?" "Ethan, please." His hand caught her face, not a slap, but a grip, fingers digging into her jaw, thumb pressing against her cheekbone hard enough to leave marks. "I have given you everything," he hissed. "A home, a life, my fucking name. And this is how you repay me? By entertaining some stranger's attention?" "I didn't ask for it," Megan whispered. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Crying only made it worse. You never ask for anything. That's your problem. You just take and give nothing back. He released her face, shoved her backward. She caught herself against the wall. "You're pathetic. No wonder your parents died. Probably couldn't stand watching what you became." The words hit harder than his hands ever could. Megan felt something crack inside her. Not break. She'd been breaking for years, but finally, violently crack. A fault line forming in the foundation of her fear. "Get out of my sight," Ethan said, already turning away. "And if I ever catch you with another man's number again, you'll regret it." He walked to his study and slammed the door. Megan stood in the hallway, trembling. She waited until she heard him pour a drink, settle into his chair, start typing angry emails to whoever had upset him at work. Then she gathered the contents of her purse with shaking hands, picked up the black card, and walked to the bedroom. She locked the bathroom door, sat on the floor, stared at the embossed silver numbers. Her phone was in her hand before she fully realized she'd pulled it out. She could call, right now, this second. But what would she say? "A stranger gave me his number and I'm married to a monster? Please save me from the life I'm too weak to escape?" No. Megan put the phone down, folded the card, hid it in the bottom of her makeup drawer beneath foundations and concealers and all the other things she used to cover up the truth. Not yet. But the card's existence changed something, proved that someone outside this gilded cage could see her, really see her. She just had to survive long enough to be ready. 3 days passed. Megan moved through them like a ghost, avoiding Ethan when possible, placating him when not. He worked late, came home drunk, ignored her except to issue commands. She researched the phone number online, found nothing. Searched for black business cards with silver numbers, found thousands. Tried to remember every detail of the man's face and came up empty except for those eyes, those cold, knowing eyes. On the third night, Ethan came home early. Megan was in the kitchen preparing dinner she knew he probably wouldn't eat. She heard the front door, heard his footsteps. Too heavy, too fast. He appeared in the doorway holding his phone. "We need to talk," he said. Something in his voice made her put down the knife she'd been using to chop vegetables. "About what?" "About the fact that someone's been asking questions about me." He moved closer. "At work. About my clients. About certain transactions I've been handling." Megan's heart stopped. "I don't understand." "Someone thinks I'm doing something illegal. Someone's been feeding information to people who have no business knowing my business." His eyes locked on hers. "And the only person who's been acting strange lately is you." "Ethan, I haven't what? Haven't been plotting? Haven't been talking to that man from the restaurant?" He grabbed her shoulders, shook her once. "Did he put you up to this? Did he tell you to spy on me?" "I haven't spoken to anyone," Megan's voice cracked. "I don't even know who he is." "Liar." Ethan's hand pulled back. Megan saw it coming, had seen it coming for 3 years. Every argument that ended with apologies and flowers, every accident that left bruises in places evening gowns would cover, every moment she'd convinced herself it wasn't that bad. Wasn't often enough? Wasn't worth leaving over. It had been building to this. His fist caught her cheekbone. The world exploded into white light and copper taste. She hit the counter, caught the edge with her ribs, went down hard on kitchen tile. "You think I don't know what you are?" Ethan stood over her, breathing hard. You think I don't see you looking for a way out? Your parents left you nothing. You have no money. No friends I didn't approve. No family. You're nothing without me. Megan tasted blood. Her vision swam. And you're going to tell me the truth, Ethan continued, or I swear to God. She ran, didn't think, didn't plan, just scrambled to her feet and bolted for the bedroom, Ethan's footsteps thundering behind her. She made it inside, slammed the door, threw the lock. His fist hit the wood so hard the frame shuddered. Open this door. No! Megan backed toward the bathroom, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. Open it! The door frame cracked. He was going to break through. Megan locked herself in the bathroom, the only room in the apartment with a lock Ethan hadn't removed, and pulled out the black card with fingers that barely worked. She dialed. The phone rang once, twice. Ethan hit the bedroom door again. It splintered. 3 rings. Please, Megan whispered. Please pick up. Yes? The voice was calm, accented, familiar. You said to call when I wanted out, Megan said, words tumbling over each other. I want out. I want out right now. Please. Address? She gave it. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. I'm 10 minutes away. The line went dead. Megan sank to the bathroom floor, back against the tub, listening to Ethan destroy the bedroom. He was screaming now, incoherent, promising things that made her blood freeze. She wrapped her arms around her knees and started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. At count 37, she heard new sounds. The apartment door opening, multiple footsteps. Voices, low, commanding, unfamiliar. Then Ethan's voice. Who the fuck are you? This is my home. A hard, wet sound. A body hitting a wall. Silence. Someone knocked on the bathroom door. 3 measured taps. Megan? The accented voice. It's safe now. Open the door. She stood on shaking legs and turned the lock. The man from the restaurant stood in her destroyed bedroom, perfectly calm despite the chaos around him. He wasn't alone. 3 other men in dark suits flanked him, faces professionally blank. Beyond them, in the hallway, Ethan was pressed against the wall by 2 more men who looked like they broke bones for a living. The stranger's eyes found the bruise already forming on Megan's face. Something flickered in his expression, something cold and final. Get her things, he said to one of his men without looking away from her. Everything important, 2 minutes. Then he stepped closer to Megan, moving slowly like she was a wounded animal that might bolt. My name is Lucian Moretti, he said quietly, and you're leaving with me. Do you understand? Megan looked past him at Ethan, who was staring at her with pure hatred and dawning fear. She looked at the bedroom she'd lived in like a prisoner for 3 years. She looked at Lucian Moretti, this dangerous stranger who'd answered a phone call in the middle of the night and brought armed men to extract her from hell. I understand, she whispered. Lucian nodded once. Then let's go. He offered his hand. Megan took it and walked out of her cage without looking back. The car was a black Mercedes with windows tinted dark enough to hide sins. Megan sat in the back seat, still shaking, watching Manhattan blur past in streaks of neon and rain. One of Lucian's men had grabbed a duffel bag from her closet, threw in clothes without folding, stuffed in her laptop, her parents' photo albums, the jewelry box her mother had given her before the accident. Everything that mattered fit in one bag. 3 years of marriage reduced to 40 pounds of fabric and memory. Lucian sat beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget used to. He hadn't spoken since they left the apartment. Just made 2 phone calls in rapid Italian, voice low and commanding, then went silent. Megan pressed her fingertips against the window. Her reflection stared back, bruised, terrified, alive. Where are we going? Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Somewhere safe. Lucian glanced at her, those dark eyes cataloging damage. You need medical attention. I'm fine. You're bleeding. She touched her lip. Her fingers came away red. It's nothing. It's assault. His tone didn't change, but something in the car went colder, and it's the last time he'll ever touch you. The certainty in those words should have frightened her. Instead, Megan felt something unlock in her chest. Permission, maybe. Or just the simple relief of someone else carrying the weight for 5 goddamn minutes. Who are you? She asked. Really? Lucian was quiet for a block. 2 blocks. Then, someone who knows what men like your husband are capable of. Someone who stops them. That's not an answer. It's the only one you need tonight. The car turned down a side street, pulled into an underground garage beneath a building that looked like it housed hedge funds and corporate law firms. The driver, a man built like a wall with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, killed the engine. "We're here," Lucian said. He opened the door and extended his hand. Megan took it and stepped out into fluorescent lighting that made everything look clinical and strange. The garage was empty except for a handful of expensive cars. No cameras that she could see. No witnesses. For half a second, a voice in her head, Ethan's voice because he'd lived there so long she couldn't evict him, whispered, "You don't know this man. He could kill you down here and nobody would ever know." But the voice was wrong, because if Lucien Moretti wanted her dead, she'd already be dead. "This way." He guided her toward an elevator with his hand hovering near her lower back, close enough to be protective, far enough to give her space, like he understood that being touched right now might shatter her completely. The elevator opened. They stepped inside. Lucien pressed the button for the 23rd floor. As the doors slid shut, Megan caught sight of herself in the mirrored walls. Expensive black dress torn at the shoulder, hair wild, makeup smeared. She looked like the aftermath of a car crash. "I must look insane," she muttered. "You look like someone who fought back." The elevator climbed. Megan's ears popped. "What happened to Ethan?" she asked. "Your men, they didn't kill him?" "No." Lucian's jaw tightened. "Though I wanted to." "Then what?" "He's handcuffed to his own radiator, very sober and very aware that if he calls the police, I have enough evidence of his embezzlement from the Russo organization to put him in federal prison for 20 years. Megan blinked. "What?" "Your husband doesn't just work for a law firm, Megan. He launders money for the Russian mob. Has been for 3 years. The same 3 years you've been married." Lucian studied her reaction. "You didn't know." It wasn't a question. "No," Megan whispered. But pieces were clicking together now. The late nights, the cash payments, the violent paranoia about people asking questions. "How do you—" "No?" Lucien's smile was blade thin. "Because I make it my business to know everything about the Russos and the people who work for them." The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto a private hallway with exactly one door. Lucien led her inside. The penthouse was everything their Fifth Avenue apartment pretended to be. Actual wealth, not the desperate performance of it. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that looked comfortable instead of expensive. Art on the walls that someone had chosen because they liked it, not because it increased property value. "Sit," Lucian said, gesturing to a leather sofa. "I'll get the first aid kit." He disappeared down a hallway. Megan sank onto the couch, exhausted down to her bones. Her ribs ached where she'd hit the counter, her face throbbed, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Lucian returned with a black medical bag and a bottle of whiskey. He poured 2 fingers into a crystal glass and handed it to her. "Drink." She did. The burn felt good, real. He sat beside her and opened the kit, pulling out antiseptic and gauze with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. "May I?" Megan nodded. His hands were gentle. He cleaned the split in her lip, the scrape on her cheekbone, worked with the quiet focus of a man who understood that touch could heal or destroy depending on intention. When he finished, he sat back. "You should see a doctor tomorrow. Get x-rays. Make sure nothing's broken." "I've had worse," Megan said, then immediately regretted it because the look on Lucian's face turned murderous. "How long?" His voice was very quiet. "How long has he been hurting you?" She wanted to lie, wanted to minimize, excuse, explain. Ethan's voice in her head, "It's not that bad. You're too sensitive. Other women have it worse." But sitting here in this stranger's penthouse, bleeding into his gauze, something in her just stopped pretending. "Since the first year," she said. "Small things at first, pushing, grabbing, then bigger things, but only when I deserved it." "You didn't deserve it. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Lucian's eyes held hers. "No one deserves that. Ever." Megan felt her throat close. She looked away, blinking hard. "Why did you help me? You don't know me. I'm nobody." "You're not nobody." I'm a stranger who spilled wine at a restaurant. You're a woman who was being hurt by a man who thought he owned you. Lucien set down the antiseptic. I've seen that look before. The one you had at dinner, like you were disappearing in real time. And you just decided to save me? I decided to offer you a choice. His voice was steel wrapped in silk. You're the one who called. They sat in silence. Rain hammered the windows. The city glowed beyond the glass like a circuit board, a million lives burning bright and desperate. What happens now? Megan asked. Now you sleep. Tomorrow we figure out the rest. I don't have anywhere to go. No money. Ethan controls everything. You can stay here. She laughed, sharp and bitter. I can't just move into a stranger's penthouse. Why not? Because, she gestured helplessly, because people don't do that. Because you don't know me. Because this is insane. So was staying married to a man who beat you? The words hit like a slap. True and ugly and impossible to argue with. Megan stood, suddenly needing distance. She walked to the windows, pressed her forehead against cold glass. Who are you, Lucien? And don't give me that cryptic non-answer again. If I'm going to trust you, I need to know what I'm trusting. Behind her, she heard him stand. Heard him pour another drink. When he spoke, his voice came from directly behind her, close enough to feel his presence, far enough to let her run if she needed to. My family came from Sicily 3 generations ago, he said. Built an empire here, doing things that weren't entirely legal. My father ran it until he died 5 years ago, and then it became mine. Megan closed her eyes. You're a criminal. I'm a lot of things. No apology in his tone. But I don't hurt women. I don't traffic people. I don't touch children, and I don't work with men who do. But you do hurt people. Yes. At least he was honest. She turned to face him. He was watching her with that same unreadable expression, waiting for her to bolt. Waiting for the moral outrage. Waiting for her to call him a monster and demand he take her somewhere else. The Russos, Megan said slowly. Ethan works for them. You said you know everything about them. I do. Why? Lucian's smile was winter cold. Because they're my competition, and because 6 months ago they killed one of my men during a territory dispute. So yes, I've been watching them, closely. And Ethan was a bonus. Lucien took a sip of whiskey. I've had men tracking the Russo organization's financial network for weeks. Your husband's embezzlement showed up on our radar a month ago. I was planning to use the information to destabilize their operation. But then you saw me at the restaurant. Yes. And you decided to use me instead. Something flickered across his face. No. I decided to help you. The fact that it also damages the Russos is convenient, not the goal. Megan didn't know if she believed him, didn't know if it mattered. So what now? She asked. You keep me here like some kind of witness protection program while you wage war on the Russian mob? I keep you safe while you figure out what you want your life to look like. He set down his glass. And then I help you build it. Why? Because I can. That's not a reason. Lucien moved closer. Not threatening, just present. My mother was married to a man who hurt her. For 20 years she stayed because she had nowhere else to go. No money, no family, no way out. His voice was carefully controlled. When I was 16, I watched her die because he pushed her down the stairs during an argument. He called it an accident. The police believed him. Megan's breath caught. So when I see a woman with that look, Lucien continued, the one that says she's already planning her own funeral, I don't walk away. I can't. The confession hung between them like broken glass. I'm sorry, Megan whispered. Don't be sorry, just stay alive. He stepped back, giving her space again. The guest room is down the hall, second door on the left. Lock it if you want. I won't bother you. He started to walk away. Lucien? He turned. Thank you. He nodded once, then disappeared into the shadows of his own home, leaving Megan alone with her thoughts and the rain and the impossible weight of freedom she didn't know how to carry yet. She didn't sleep. Megan lay in the guest room, which was bigger than the bedroom she'd shared with Ethan, staring at the ceiling and waiting for the other shoe to drop. For Lucien to knock on the door with different intentions. For Ethan to somehow find her. For this entire night to reveal itself as another trap dressed up as rescue. But nothing happened. The apartment stayed silent except for the rain and the distant hum of the city. At some point near dawn, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Lucien, probably, unable to sleep either. But he didn't stop at her door, just walked past toward what she assumed was his own room. When gray light finally bled through the windows, Megan gave up on sleep and ventured out. The penthouse looked different in daylight. Less dangerous, more lived in. Books stacked on side tables, a half-finished chess game on the coffee table, a leather jacket thrown over a chair. She found Lucien in the kitchen, wearing dark jeans and a black t-shirt, making espresso with the focused intensity of a man who treated coffee like religion. "You're up early," he said without turning around. "Couldn't sleep." "Understandable." He poured a second cup and handed it to her. "Sugar's in the cabinet, milk in the fridge." Megan took the espresso black and sat at the kitchen island. The marble was cold beneath her palms, real, solid. "I need to go back to the apartment," she said. "There are things I need already handled." Lucien pulled out his phone, scrolled, showed her a photo. "My men went back this morning, got the rest of your clothes, your documents, anything that looked important." The photo showed her closet, mostly empty now. "What about Ethan?" "Gone when they arrived. Probably ran to his bosses at the Russo organization." Lucien pocketed his phone. "Which means you're officially a target." The words settled like ice in her stomach. "What?" "The Russos don't like loose ends. You were married to one of their money launderers. You know things, even if you don't realize you know them." He met her eyes. "They'll come looking for you, to silence you or use you as leverage against Ethan. Either way, it's not good." Megan set down her espresso before her shaking hands could spill it. "So what am I supposed to do? Hide here forever?" "No. We make you untouchable." "How?" "By making it clear you're under my protection." Lucien's expression was carved granite. "And the Russos know better than to touch what's mine." The possessiveness in that statement should have frightened her. Maybe it did, but mostly it just felt like the first real safety she'd known in years. "I'm not yours," Megan said quietly. "No," Lucien agreed, "but they don't know that." Her phone, the one Ethan had paid for, monitored, controlled, buzzed on the counter. She'd left it there last night, too scared to look at it. Now she picked it up. 43 missed calls. All from Ethan. 67 text messages. She opened them with hands that barely worked. The first few were apologies. "Baby, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Please, come home." Then anger. "You stupid bitch. You think you can just leave? You think anyone else will want you?" Then threats. "I'll find you. I'll make you regret this. You're nothing without me." And finally, this morning, "They're coming for you, the people I work for. They know you left. They think you're talking to the feds. Whatever that man promised you, it's a lie. Come home and I can protect you. Please." Megan read the last message 3 times. Her hands went numb. "He's right," she whispered. "They're coming." Lucien plucked the phone from her fingers, read the messages, then calmly walked to the sink and dropped it in. Turned on the garbage disposal. The phone's death rattle lasted 5 seconds. "New rule," he said over the grinding noise. "No contact with Ethan. Not ever. He doesn't get to know where you are, or who you're with, or whether you're scared." "But no." Lucien turned off the disposal. "He's a coward trying to manipulate you into running back to him. And even if the Russos are looking for you, they won't find you. Not here." "How can you be sure?" "Because this building is owned by a shell corporation I control. The security is ex-military, and anyone who tries to get to you has to go through me first." His eyes were dark promises. "I've been at war with the Russos for months. You're not the weakness they think you are. You're the reason I'm going to destroy them." The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it made Megan realize she'd traded one dangerous man for another. The only difference was this one asked permission before making decisions. "I need air," she said abruptly. I can't just sit here waiting to be hunted." Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then, "Get dressed. I'll take you somewhere." 20 minutes later, they were in the back of another black car. Different driver, same tinted windows, sliding through Manhattan traffic toward God knows where. Megan wore jeans and a sweater from the bag Lucien's men had grabbed. Simple clothes, comfortable. Hers. "Where are we going?" she asked. You'll see. They ended up in Brooklyn, outside a narrow bookstore that looked like it had been transplanted from another century. Hand-painted sign, warped wooden door, windows stacked with so many books you couldn't see inside. Lucienne opened her door. Come on! The bookstore smelled like old paper and coffee and something indefinable that Megan's soul recognized as home. Shelves stretched toward the ceiling, crammed with spines in every language. A cat, orange, fat, supremely unbothered, slept on the front counter. Lucienne! An elderly woman emerged from the back, arms outstretched. She was tiny, white-haired, wearing a cardigan that had seen better decades. I wasn't expecting you today. Angela. Lucienne bent to kiss her cheek. I brought someone who needs saving. Angela turned sharp eyes on Megan, took in the bruises, the haunted expression, the way she held herself like someone expecting the next blow. Oh, sweetheart, she said softly. Then to Lucienne, 3rd floor, poetry section. Nobody will bother her there. Lucienne guided Megan toward a narrow staircase. They climbed past fiction, past history, past philosophy, until they reached a dusty 3rd floor that smelled like forgotten stories and possibility. Sit, Lucienne said, gesturing to a worn armchair by the window. Read, hide, whatever you need. Megan sank into the chair. You're leaving? I have business, but I'll be back in 3 hours. He handed her a different phone. New, sleek, no history. My number's programmed in. You need anything? Call. Why are you doing this? Because you need to remember who you were before he made you forget. Lucienne's expression softened almost imperceptibly. And bookstores are good for that. Then he was gone. Megan sat alone, surrounded by poetry she hadn't read in years, listening to rain tap against the window, and for the first time since her parents died, she let herself cry. Not silent tears, not hidden grief, full, ugly, gasping sobs that emptied her out and left her raw and clean. When she finally stopped, she pulled a book from the nearest shelf. Pablo Neruda, 20 love poems and a song of despair, her mother's favorite. Megan opened to a random page and started reading, and slowly, word by word, began remembering what it felt like to be human. 3 hours later, Lucienne returned to find her curled in the armchair with a stack of books and an expression that looked less shattered. Better? He asked. Getting there. She stood, reluctant to leave. Can we come back? Whenever you want. The drive back to the penthouse was quiet, comfortable almost, like they'd reached some unspoken understanding, but when they arrived, 2 men in dark suits were waiting in the lobby. Lucienne's entire demeanor changed, went from relaxed to lethal in the space of a heartbeat. Stay behind me, he said quietly. The men approached. One was tall, blonde, looked like he'd been carved from ice. The other was shorter, dark-haired, with eyes that missed nothing. Lucienne, the blonde one said, we need to talk. Marco, not a good time. It's about the Russos. Marco's gaze flicked to Megan. And your new house guest. Lucien's jaw tightened. Upstairs, now. They rode the elevator in tense silence. Megan's heart hammered against her ribs. These men worked for Lucienne. She could tell by the way they deferred to him, but that didn't make them safe. Inside the penthouse, Lucienne gestured for Megan to sit. She did, perched on the edge of the sofa like a bird ready to fly. Talk, Lucienne said to Marco. The Russos know you have her. Ethan Mercer showed up at one of their fronts this morning, bleeding and scared, told them his wife ran off with you. Marco's expression was grim. They're putting a price on her head. 50,000 to whoever brings her in alive. The room went very cold. They think she's cooperating with the feds, the dark-haired man added. Think Mercer was going to turn witness, and she's part of it. She's not, Lucienne said flatly. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what they believe. Marco looked at Megan again, not unkindly. You're a dead woman walking unless Lucienne can convince them otherwise. Megan's throat closed. How does he do that? By making them more afraid of him than they are of the feds, Marco said, which means escalation, which means war. No. Megan stood, shaking her head. No, I'm not worth that. I'm not worth people dying. You don't get to decide your worth. Lucienne's voice cut through her panic. They made this move. I'm finishing it. By doing what? Killing people? Starting a gang war over a woman you met 4 days ago? Yes. The single word hung in the air like a blade. Megan stared at him, at this man who'd saved her, sheltered her, given her books and coffee, and the first taste of freedom she'd known in years. This man who was apparently willing to burn down half of New York's criminal underworld because someone threatened her. That's insane, she whispered. That's how this world works. Lucian's eyes were black ice. The Russos drew the line. I'm crossing it. And when I'm done, they'll know that touching you means dying. I didn't ask for this. You called me. That made you mine to protect. He stepped closer, voice dropping. And I don't lose what's mine. The possessiveness was back, raw and undeniable. Megan should have run, should have demanded he take her to the police, witness protection, anywhere but here. Instead, she heard herself say, "What do you need me to do?" Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to Marco. "Call the meeting tomorrow night. Every family. I'm making a statement." "Lucien, do it." Marco exchanged a look with his partner, then nodded and left. Silence filled the penthouse. "What kind of statement?" Megan asked. "The kind that makes clear you're untouchable, that I'll go to war with anyone who tries to hurt you." Lucien poured himself a drink. "It won't be pretty, but it'll keep you alive. And if they don't believe you, if they come anyway, then they die. Simple as that." Megan walked to the window, looked out at the city where she'd lived her whole life but never really understood. How many people down there were like Lucien? And like Ethan? How many monsters wore expensive suits and smiled for cameras? "I don't know how to live in your world," she said quietly. "You're not in my world. You're under my protection. There's a difference." "Is there?" She turned to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Yes," he said finally, "because in my world I decide who lives and dies. In yours, you decide who you want to become. And if I decide I want to leave, then I'll help you disappear, set you up somewhere safe with enough money to start over." His voice was perfectly level. "But I don't think that's what you want. You don't know what I want. Don't I?" The question hit like a challenge, because the truth was, Megan didn't know what she wanted either. Safety, yes. Freedom, definitely. But this dangerous man and his violent world and the way he looked at her like she was worth destroying kingdoms for. She didn't know what to do with that. "I need to think," she said. "Then think. You have time." But she didn't. Because 12 hours later at 2 in the morning, someone tried to kill her. The explosion took out 3 floors of the building. And when the smoke cleared, Megan would have to decide exactly how far she was willing to fall into Lucien Moretti's darkness, and whether she'd survive the landing. The first thing Megan registered was the sound, a deep, violent roar that turned the world inside out. Then heat. Then the sensation of being lifted and thrown like a rag doll while reality fractured into 1,000 burning pieces. She hit something hard. Wall, maybe. Floor. Her ears screamed with pressure, and her lungs forgot how to work, and somewhere through the chaos she heard Lucien's voice shouting her name. Then darkness swallowed everything. When consciousness dragged her back, she was moving. Strong arms carrying her, smoke so thick it burned her throat, alarm shrieking from every direction. She tried to speak, but only managed a cough that tasted like ash and copper. "Don't talk." Lucien's voice, rough and urgent against her ear. "Just breathe." Emergency lights flickered in the stairwell. Megan's vision swam. She registered other people, Lucien's men, residents in bathrobes stumbling through smoke, someone screaming about calling 911. The stairs seemed endless. Her body felt disconnected, like she was piloting a machine that had taken catastrophic damage. They burst through a side exit into cold night air that hit her lungs like salvation. Lucien didn't stop moving until they were across the street, setting her down behind a black SUV while sirens wailed closer. "Look at me." His hands framed her face, forcing her eyes to focus. Blood ran from a gash above his temple. His shirt was torn, covered in dust and debris. "Are you hurt?" Megan tried to inventory her body. Everything ached, but nothing felt broken. I don't know." Lucian's hands moved over her with clinical efficiency, checking for injuries. When he seemed satisfied she wasn't dying, he pulled out his phone and barked orders in Italian. Around them, the building bled smoke into the sky. Fire trucks arrived, police cordoned off the street. Chaos bloomed in every direction. Marco appeared out of the smoke, limping but alive. 20th floor, car bomb triggered remotely. Professional job. Casualties? Lucian's voice was ice. 3 dead. Building security and a resident, 12 injured. Marco's eyes found Megan. You were the target. Explosives were placed directly below your guest room. The words penetrated slowly. 3 people dead. Because of her. Because the Russos wanted her silenced and didn't care who else burned in the process. Megan's stomach lurched. She turned and vomited onto the pavement, heaving until there was nothing left but bile and horror. Lucian's hand settled on her back, steady, grounding. Get her out of here, he said to Marco. Safe house in Brooklyn. Nobody moves until I give the word. What are you going to do? End this. Lucian stood, already pulling out his phone again. Tonight. Lucien. Megan grabbed his wrist. Her fingers came away bloody. Those people. They died because of me. He crouched down to her level, eyes burning with something cold and final. They died because the Russos are animals who don't value human life. This isn't on you. It's on them. His jaw tightened. And I'm going to make them pay for every drop of blood. Before she could respond, Marco was pulling her toward another vehicle. She looked back once and saw Lucian standing in the street, silhouetted against the burning building, phone pressed to his ear while he orchestrated war. Then Marco shoved her into the SUV, and they were gone. The Brooklyn Safe House was a converted warehouse in Red Hook that smelled like motor oil and stale coffee. No windows on the ground floor, steel-reinforced doors, enough surveillance equipment to make the NSA jealous. Megan sat on a ratty couch in what passed for a living area, wrapped in a blanket someone had thrown over her shoulders, while 2 of Lucian's men stood guard and pretended she didn't exist. Her ears still rang, her hands still shook. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw fire. Marco brought her water. Drink. She did mechanically. The water tasted like ash. How long do I have to stay here? Until Lucian says otherwise. That's not an answer. Marco's expression softened fractionally. You want the truth? The Russos just declared open war. They tried to kill you in a building full of civilians. That kind of move means they're desperate or stupid, and desperate criminals do desperate things. He sat down across from her. You're not safe anywhere except where Lucien can control the variables. So I'm a prisoner. You're alive. Marco's tone was flat. 3 people downstairs aren't. I'd call that a win. The words hit like a physical blow. Megan pulled the blanket tighter around herself, suddenly freezing despite the warehouse's industrial heating. Who were they? The people who died? Does it matter? Yes, Marco sighed. Building security guard. Name was Curtis Hammond, 56, 2 kids in college, resident on the 19th floor, Elena Volkov, 73, emigrated from Russia 40 years ago. And her nurse, Patricia Chen, 28, just got engaged last month. Each name landed like a stone. Real people, real lives. Ended because Megan had been stupid enough to think running from one monster meant she'd be safe from all the others. I should go to the police, she whispered. And tell them what? That you witnessed your husband laundering money for the Russian mob? That a crime boss is protecting you from other criminals? Marco shook his head. Best case, you end up in witness protection with a target on your back. Worst case, the Russos have enough cops on payroll that you're dead within 48 hours. Then what am I supposed to do? Trust Lucien. I don't even know him. You know he pulled you out of a burning building tonight instead of letting you die. Marco stood. That's more than most people in this world would do. He walked away, leaving Megan alone with her guilt and the echoing warehouse and the terrible knowledge that 3 innocent people had paid the price for her freedom. She must have dozed eventually because the next thing she knew, Lucien was crouching in front of her, his hand gentle on her shoulder. Hey. His voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. You're okay. You're safe. Megan opened her eyes. Lucien looked like he'd walked through hell. His clothes were different. Black tactical gear that made him look more soldier than businessman. Blood on his hands, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. What time is it? 6 a.m. She'd been here for 4 hours. It felt like 4 minutes or 4 years, impossible to tell. What happened? She asked. Lucian sat beside her on the couch, close enough that she could feel his body heat. I sent a message. The Russos understand now that coming after you means coming after me, and I don't lose. What kind of message? The permanent kind. Megan studied his face, trying to read what that meant. His expression gave nothing away. You killed people. Yes. How many? How? Enough. Lucien met her eyes. And I'd do it again. The men who planted that bomb, the ones who gave the order, the middlemen who thought they could profit from your death. They're gone. All of them. She should have been horrified. Should have recoiled from this man who could discuss murder with the same tone someone might use to discuss quarterly earnings. Instead, she just felt numb. The police are investigating the explosion, Lucien continued. Official story is a gas leak. Building inspector already confirmed it. No evidence of foul play. You bribed him. I made sure the truth stayed buried. There's a difference. Is there? Megan pulled away, needing space. 3 people are dead, Lucien. Real people with families and lives and futures, and you're just, what, making it disappear? Pretending it never happened? I'm making sure their families are taken care of. His voice hardened. Curtis Hammond's kids will have their college paid for. Elena Volkov's grandchildren in Moscow will receive enough money to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. Patricia Chen's fiancé will get a settlement that ensures he never has to work again if he doesn't want to. Blood money. Reparations. Lucien started pacing. You think I don't know what this cost? You think I wanted civilians caught in the crossfire? Then why? Because you called me. His voice cracked like thunder. You made a choice, Megan. You asked me to get you out, and I did. But choices have consequences. In my world, those consequences are measured in bodies and blood and things that can't be undone. The warehouse went silent except for their breathing. Megan stared at him, at this dangerous man who'd saved her and damned her in the same breath. I didn't ask for people to die. No, you asked to be free. Lucian's expression was carved granite, and freedom isn't free. It never has been. She wanted to argue, wanted to scream that this wasn't what she meant, wasn't what she wanted, wasn't worth the price. But the truth was more complicated, because she was free. Ethan couldn't touch her anymore. The Russos wouldn't dare make another move. She could breathe without counting the cost, speak without measuring her words, exist without fear of the next blow. And all it took was 3 innocent people burning alive. I can't live with this, she whispered. You can. You will. Lucien moved closer, not touching, but present. Because the alternative is going back to being a victim, and I don't think you want that anymore. He was right. That was the worst part. He was absolutely right. Megan had tasted freedom now, had felt what it was like to make her own choices, read her own books, speak her own mind. Going back to Ethan's cage, or any cage, would kill something inside her that had just started breathing again. I hate you for this, she said. I know. I hate that you're right. I know that too. They stood in the cold warehouse dawn, 2 people bound together by violence and circumstance, and choices neither of them could take back. Finally, Lucien spoke again. There's a meeting tonight. Every major organization in the city. I'm making it clear that you're under my protection, and any move against you is a move against me. Will it work? It has to. His eyes held hers. Because if it doesn't, we go to war for real, and this time, a lot more than 3 people die. Megan closed her eyes. What do you need me to do? Stay here, stay safe. Let me handle this. And after, when the meeting's done and the threats are made and everyone knows I'm yours, she caught herself, that I'm under your protection. What then? Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then you decide what kind of life you want to build, and I help you build it. Just like that? Just like that. It sounded too simple, too clean. Nothing in Megan's life had ever been that straightforward. But before she could respond, Marco appeared in the doorway, face grim. We have a problem. Lucien's entire posture shifted. What kind of problem? Ethan Mercer. He's talking to the FBI. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. When? Lucian's voice was deadly calm. 2 hours ago. Walked into the Manhattan field office and started singing. Marco pulled out his phone, showed them a photo of Ethan entering a federal building flanked by agents. He's offering evidence on the Russo organization in exchange for immunity and witness protection. Son of a bitch! Lucian grabbed the phone, studied the image. What does he know? Enough to bring down their entire financial network. Account numbers, shell corporations, money trails, 3 years of records. Marco's expression was grave. And he's naming you too, Lucian. Says you've been running a criminal enterprise, that you're the one who orchestrated the building explosion, that you kidnapped his wife. Megan's blood went cold. He's lying. Doesn't matter if he's lying. Matters if the feds believe him. Marco looked between them. They're building a RICO case. If they move forward, they'll freeze your assets, raid your properties, arrest everyone in your organization. How long do we have? Days? Maybe hours? Lucian handed back the phone, his mind clearly racing through options. Get the lawyers, every single one. I want damage control strategies on my desk in an hour. Already done. Marco hesitated. There's more. Of course there is. The FBI wants to talk to Megan. They think she can corroborate Ethan's testimony about the Russos. And about you. Every eye in the warehouse turned to her. Megan felt the weight of that attention like physical pressure. I'm not testifying against Lucy's yen. You might not have a choice, Marco said. If they subpoena you, then I'll refuse. And go to jail for contempt? For a man you've known less than a week? Marco's tone wasn't unkind, just realistic. Think about what you're saying. But Megan was thinking. For the first time in years, she was thinking with absolute clarity. Ethan had controlled her through fear and violence. The Russos wanted her dead for convenience. The FBI wanted to use her as a weapon against the only person who'd actually protected her. Everyone wanted something from her. Everyone except Lucian, who'd simply asked what she wanted and then helped her take it. I'm not testifying, she repeated, against anyone. I don't know anything about criminal enterprises or money laundering. I was just a wife trying to survive her marriage. It was technically true. She hadn't known about Ethan's illegal activities, hadn't participated, hadn't profited beyond the cage he'd built around her. Lucienne was watching her with an unreadable expression. You understand what you're choosing? The FBI doesn't take kindly to uncooperative witnesses. I understand. They could charge you as an accomplice, put you in prison. Then I go to prison. Megan's voice was steel. But I'm not helping them put you there, not after everything. Something flickered across Lucian's face. Surprise, maybe, or respect. You're sure? I'm sure. Marco muttered something in Italian that sounded like a prayer or a curse. This is insane. You're both insane. Probably, Lucien agreed, but we're committed now. He turned to Megan. If you do this, there's no going back. The FBI will come after you hard. They'll dig into every aspect of your life, interview everyone you've ever known, try to break you. Let them try. The words came out stronger than she felt. But Megan was done being broken. Done being used. Done letting other people decide her worth and her future and what she deserved. If choosing Lucien meant choosing his darkness, fine. She'd survived worse. Okay. Lucien's voice was quiet but absolute. Then we fight together. He extended his hand. Megan took it. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice that sounded suspiciously like her mother's whispered that she'd just made a deal with the devil. But devils, Megan was learning, came in many forms. And sometimes they were the only ones who showed up when angels looked away. The FBI came for her that afternoon. Megan was sleeping, or trying to, when Marco shook her awake. Get up, federal agents outside, they have a warrant. She bolted upright, heart hammering. For what? Material witness. They want to bring you in for questioning. Can they do that? They just did. Marco handed her a jacket. Lucien's already on the phone with the lawyers. They'll meet you at the field office. Don't say anything without representation present. Where's Lucien? Dealing with his own problems. The feds raided 3 of his properties this morning. Marco's expression was grim. This is a coordinated strike. Someone high up wants both of you off the board. Megan pulled on the jacket with shaking hands. Through the warehouse windows, she could see black SUVs blocking the street, men in FBI windbreakers taking positions. What do I do? Exactly what you told Lucian you'd do. Stay quiet. Don't give them anything. Marco gripped her shoulder. And remember, they're trying to scare you into cooperating. Don't let them. The door burst open. 5 federal agents, weapons drawn, flooded into the warehouse. Megan Mercer? The lead agent was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. I'm Special Agent Reeves. You're coming with us. On what grounds? Material witness to ongoing criminal investigations. You can come voluntarily, or we can arrest you for obstruction. Your choice. Not much of a choice. Megan raised her hands. I'll come voluntarily. They cuffed her anyway. The ride to the Manhattan field office was silent, except for the crackle of radio chatter. Megan stared out the window at the city sliding past. Her city? The one she'd lived in her whole life, but suddenly felt like foreign territory. At the federal building, they processed her like a criminal. Fingerprints, photos, paperwork. Then they put her in an interrogation room with a steel table, 2 chairs, and a mirror that definitely had people watching behind it. Agent Reeves entered 20 minutes later with a file folder and a recorder. Thank you for your cooperation, Mrs. Mercer. It's Ms. Vale. Megan's voice was steady. I haven't used my married name in days. Right. Reeves sat down, opened the folder. Ms. Vale, I'm going to ask you some questions about your husband, Ethan Mercer, and about Lucien Moretti. But first, I want you to understand something. You're not in trouble. We know you're a victim here. A victim. Your husband abused you. We have hospital records showing you sought treatment for injuries on 3 separate occasions over the past 2 years. Injuries you claimed were accidents. Reeves pushed photos across the table. Emergency room intake forms. Megan's own face, bruised and swollen from a night she'd tried to forget. We also know Lucien Moretti extracted you from your home, that you've been staying in his properties, that you were present during last night's explosion that killed 3 people. Megan's stomach twisted, but she kept her expression neutral. I'd like to speak to my lawyer. You're not under arrest. You don't need a lawyer. I'd like to speak to my lawyer, Megan repeated. Reeves studied her for a long moment. Then she leaned back, changed tactics. Your husband is offering testimony that could dismantle one of the largest organized crime networks in New York. The Russo organization has been responsible for dozens of murders, human trafficking, drug distribution, money laundering. We're talking about saving lives, Miss Vale, real lives. I understand. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've traded one abuser for another. Lucien Moretti isn't your savior. He's a criminal, a dangerous one. And sooner or later, he's going to hurt you too. The words were designed to crack her, to make her doubt, to resurrect every fear Ethan had planted. But Megan had spent 3 years learning to recognize manipulation. I'd like to speak to my lawyer, she said for the 3rd time. Reeves' expression hardened. Fine, but understand something. Your husband is going into witness protection, new identity, new life, complete immunity for his testimony. Meanwhile, you're here, alone, tied to a criminal organization. When this goes sideways, and it will, you're the one who's going to pay the price. She stood, gathered her files. Think about that while you wait for your lawyer. Think about whether Lucien Moretti is really worth throwing your life away for. The door closed with a heavy click. Megan sat alone in the interrogation room, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and tried not to think about how right Agent Reeves might be. The lawyer arrived 3 hours later, a sharp-eyed woman named Sophia Chen, who looked like she'd eaten federal prosecutors for breakfast. Don't say anything, were her first words. Not one word. They're fishing. Ethan's testifying. Let him. Sophia sat down, pulled out her own recorder. His testimony is uncorroborated without you. The Russo's lawyers will tear him apart on cross-examination. Abusive husband suddenly finding morality? Please. The jury will hate him. They're building a case against Lucien. They're building a fantasy. Sophia's smile was razor-thin. Lucien Moretti is a legitimate businessman with extensive legal holdings. Yes, he has a colorful family history. No, that doesn't make him guilty of anything they're claiming. And you're a domestic violence victim who sought help from a friend. Nothing criminal about that. They have evidence. The explosion was ruled a gas leak by the building inspector. The FBI can speculate all they want. They can't prove Lucien was involved without physical evidence linking him to the device, which doesn't exist. Sophia leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. They'll hold you for 24 hours, maybe 48, trying to scare you into cooperating. Then they'll have to charge you with something specific or let you go. Since you haven't actually committed any crimes, they'll let you go. And then? Then you disappear for a while. Let the legal teams handle the fallout. Let Ethan bury himself with his own testimony. Sophia's expression was knowing. Criminals like the Russos don't react well to rats. Witness protection or not, your husband just signed his own death warrant. It's only a matter of time. The casual prediction of Ethan's murder should have bothered Megan more than it did. Instead, she just felt tired. How long do I have to stay here? Until they get bored or their supervisor tells them to cut you loose. Sophia stood. I'll be right outside. Don't engage with them. Don't make small talk. Don't let them bait you into saying anything that could be twisted later. She left. Megan sat alone and waited, and thought about all the ways her life had fractured and reformed in the space of 1 week. 46 hours later, they released her without charges. Marco was waiting outside in yet another black SUV. He didn't speak until they were 10 blocks away. Lucien wants to see you. Where is he? Safe house in Queens, different one. The feds are watching everything now. They drove in silence. Megan stared out at the city and wondered when exactly she'd stopped being afraid and started being angry. The Queen's safe house was smaller, grimier, tucked above a bodega that smelled like grease and desperation. Lucien was waiting in a third-floor apartment that had probably been decorated in the 70s and never updated. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. You held out, he said as soon as she entered. I told you I would. I know, but I also know how persuasive federal agents can be. Lucien crossed the room, stopped just short of touching her. Are you okay? No. Megan was done pretending. I'm scared and angry, and I don't know what I'm doing anymore, but I didn't give them anything. Thank you. Don't thank me. I didn't do it for you. She met his eyes. I did it because I'm tired of being used. By Ethan, by the Russos, by the FBI. Everyone wants something from me, and I'm done giving pieces of myself away to people who don't care if I survive the transaction. Lucien studied her for a long moment. Then, quietly, What do you want, Megan? I want to stop running. I want to stop being afraid. Her voice broke. I want my life back. The one I had before my parents died. Before Ethan. Before all of this. I can't give you that. I know. But I can give you a new one if you're willing to fight for it. Megan looked at this dangerous man who'd pulled her from fire twice now, who'd killed for her, who'd asked nothing in return except that she choose herself. What does fighting look like? Lucien's smile was dark promise. It looks like we stop playing defense. Stop reacting to what the Russos and the FBI throw at us. Stop letting other people write our story. And start writing our own. Exactly. Megan took a breath. Let it out. Made a choice. Then teach me, she said. Teach me how to fight in your world. How to be dangerous enough that people think twice before coming after me. How to survive. Lucien's expression shifted. Not surprise, something deeper. Recognition, maybe. Like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. You understand what you're asking? I understand that I'm done being weak. Megan's voice didn't waver. Teach me. He studied her for 3 long seconds. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. Okay, but we start now. No half measures, no turning back. I'm not asking for half measures. Lucien turned to Marco, who'd been watching from the doorway. Clear the schedule. Cancel the meeting with the families. We have work to do. Marco's eyebrows rose. You're serious? Completely. Lucien, the Russos are expecting. Let them expect. His tone left no room for argument. This is more important. Marco shook his head but pulled out his phone, already making calls as he left the apartment. Megan stood in the middle of the grimy safe house, heart hammering, wondering what exactly she'd just committed to. Lucien crossed to a closet, opened it, pulled out a locked metal case. First lesson. In my world, information is currency. The more you know about your enemies, the harder they are to kill. He unlocked the case, spread files across the coffee table, photos, documents, surveillance reports. These are the Russos, every major player in their organization. Study them, memorize faces, names, connections. Megan moved closer. The photos showed men in expensive suits, women dripping with diamonds, all of them smiling for cameras while running an empire built on blood. Why do I need to know them? Because knowledge keeps you alive. Lucienne pointed to one photo, a heavy-set man in his 60s with cold eyes. Victor Russo, the head, former KGB, emigrated in '91, built his network from the ground up. Ruthless but practical. He doesn't make emotional decisions. He moved to another photo. His son, Alexei, early 40s, Harvard-educated, handles the legitimate business fronts. Smart, ambitious, thinks he's untouchable because of his Ivy League degree. And this one? Megan indicated a younger man, maybe 30, with a scar running from eyebrow to jaw. Dmitry Volkov, Victor's nephew, enforcer, the one who ordered the hit on you. Lucian's voice went flat. He's mine when this is over. The casual promise of violence should have frightened her. Instead, Megan felt a dark satisfaction. This man had killed 3 innocent people trying to get to her. She wanted him to pay. How many are there, total? In the Russo organization, maybe 200 soldiers, another 500 associates. Lucian pulled out more files. But the core leadership is 12 people. Take them out, the empire collapses. So we take them out. We dismantle them piece by piece. Legal pressure from the FBI investigation, financial pressure from frozen assets, internal pressure from distrust. His smile was predatory. And when they're weak enough, we finish it. Megan absorbed this. What's my role? Right now, learn, watch, understand how this world operates. Lucienne closed the case. But there's something else you need first. What? How to protect yourself when I'm not there. He led her to the bedroom. Bare mattress, single window, nothing that suggested anyone actually lived here. From under the bed, he pulled out another case. This one held weapons. Megan's breath caught. I can't. Thought. You can. Lucienne lifted out a compact pistol. And you will, because the FBI is watching me now. The Russos want you dead. Ethan's testimony is putting targets on both our backs. There will come a moment when you're alone and someone comes for you. When that happens, you need to be ready. He placed the gun in her hands. It was heavier than she expected. Cold. Final. I've never shot anyone. You've never needed to. Lucian moved behind her, adjusting her grip. His hands were steady, clinical. But you will. And when that moment comes, you can't hesitate. Hesitation gets you killed. Megan's fingers trembled against the metal. I don't know if I can. You pulled yourself out of an abusive marriage, survived an explosion, told the FBI to go to hell. His voice was low against her ear. You're stronger than you think. You just need to believe it. She wanted to be the woman he seemed to think she was, dangerous, capable, unbreakable. But all she felt was scared. Show me, she whispered. For the next 3 hours, Lucian taught her how to hold the weapon, how to aim, how to breathe through the fear. They couldn't fire it, not in a safe house surrounded by civilians, but he walked her through the mechanics until her hands stopped shaking. Good, he said finally. Now the hard part. That wasn't the hard part? That was preparation. This is decision. He took the gun, set it aside. The moment you point a weapon at another human being, you're making a choice. Their life or yours. You need to be absolutely certain which one matters more. Mine, Megan said without hesitation. Are you sure? Because once you pull that trigger, you can't undo it. You'll carry that choice for the rest of your life. She thought about the 3 people who died in the explosion, about Curtis Hammond's college-bound kids, about Elena Volkov's grandchildren, about Patricia Chen's fiancé who'd never see his wedding day. I'd rather carry the weight of survival than the weight of being a victim, she said quietly. Lucian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Then you're ready. But she wasn't, not really, because 3 days later, everything went to hell. The call came at 4 in the morning. Megan woke to Lucian's phone buzzing violently on the nightstand. She'd been sleeping in the safe house's only bedroom while he took the couch, an arrangement born of necessity rather than intimacy. She heard his voice through the thin walls, sharp and urgent in Italian. Then silence. Then footsteps. He appeared in the doorway, already dressed, face carved from granite. "Get up. We need to move. Now." Megan scrambled out of bed, pulled on jeans and a sweater. "What happened?" "Ethan's dead." The words stopped her cold. "What?" "Someone got to him in witness protection. Professional hit, clean, fast." Lucian was throwing her belongings into a bag with brutal efficiency. "The FBI thinks it was the Russos. They're wrong." "Then who?" "Doesn't matter right now. What matters is the FBI is using this as an excuse to move on both organizations simultaneously. They're raiding Russo properties and mine. Arrest warrants for Victor, Alexei, half their leadership." He shoved the bag into her hands. "And they're coming for you again, as a witness to Ethan's criminal activities." Megan's mind reeled. Ethan was dead. The husband who'd terrorized her for 3 years, gone. She should have felt something, relief, grief, satisfaction. Instead, she just felt numb. "Where do we go?" "Somewhere they won't think to look." Lucien grabbed his phone, made 3 rapid calls. "Marco's meeting us with a car. We have maybe 10 minutes before federal agents surround this building." They made it out in 8. The car was waiting in an alley 2 blocks away, engine running, Marco behind the wheel looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "Route?" Lucien asked as they climbed in. "Through Jersey. I've got a boat waiting in Atlantic City. From there, wherever you want." "You're running?" Megan couldn't believe it. Lucien Moretti doesn't run. Lucien Moretti also doesn't go to federal prison on manufactured RICO charges. He pulled out his phone, started typing. "This is tactical retreat. We disappear until the lawyers can dismantle the case." "And the Russos? They're about to have much bigger problems than us." The drive was tense, silent except for the radio chatter Marco kept monitoring. Police frequencies, federal bands. Every few miles, Lucien would issue instructions to people Megan couldn't see, moving pieces on a chessboard she didn't understand. They were crossing the Pulaski Skyway when Marco's phone rang. He answered, listened, went pale. "Lucien." "What?" "Victor Russo. He's requesting a meet tonight. Says it's urgent." "It's a trap." "Probably, but he's offering information about who really killed Ethan Mercer. Says it wasn't his people." Lucien was quiet for a long moment. "Where?" "Neutral ground. The old warehouse district in Red Hook. No weapons. 2 people each." "Absolutely not," Megan said. "Lucien, this is insane. Victor Russo wants you dead. This is my only chance to find out who's playing us against each other." He met her eyes in the rear-view mirror. Someone orchestrated this entire situation. The explosion, Ethan's testimony, the FBI raid, his murder. Someone wanted both organizations exposed and weakened. Who would benefit from that? That's what I intend to find out. He turned to Marco. "Set it up, 8 p.m., and get me everything we have on recent power plays in the city. Someone's making a move and we missed it." Marco made the call. Megan wanted to argue, wanted to scream that walking into a meeting with Victor Russo was suicide, but the look on Lucien's face told her the decision was already made. They spent the day in a warehouse in Newark, surrounded by Lucien's men and enough weapons to start a small war. Megan watched him work, coordinating with lawyers, moving money through accounts the FBI hadn't found yet, preparing for every possible outcome. At 6 p.m., he found her sitting alone in a back office, staring at the gun he'd given her. "You should stay here," he said. "This meeting, it's too dangerous." "Then you shouldn't go." "I have to." "Why?" She looked up at him. "Why do you have to risk everything for information that might not even be real?" Lucien sat down beside her. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked tired, worn, human. "Because 3 innocent people died in that explosion," he said quietly. "Because your husband was murdered in federal custody. Because someone is pulling strings, and I need to know who before more people get hurt." He paused. "And because if I don't end this now, you'll never be safe. They'll keep coming. The Russos, the FBI, whoever's behind this. You'll spend the rest of your life running. So come with me. We both run. Disappear completely. Is that what you want?" His eyes searched hers. To spend your life in hiding? No, it wasn't. Megan had spent 3 years hiding from Ethan's violence, hiding from the truth of her marriage, hiding from her own strength. She was done hiding. I'm coming with you, she said. Megan, you said 2 people each. I'm one of your 2. She stood, checked the gun's safety like he'd taught her. You need someone watching your back who isn't part of your organization. Someone Victor won't expect. That's me. This isn't a game. If this goes wrong, then we die together instead of you dying alone. She met his gaze steadily. I'm done being protected, Lucien. Cien. I'm done watching from the sidelines while other people fight my battles. This is my life they're trying to destroy. I have a right to face it. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then something in his expression shifted. Acceptance, maybe. Or respect. Okay, he said finally. But you follow my lead. You don't engage unless I tell you to. And if I say run, you run. Understood? Understood. He stood, offered his hand. Then let's finish this. Shades. Red Hook at night looked like the end of the world. The warehouse district was all crumbling brick and broken windows. Industry that had died decades ago, leaving nothing but ghosts and rust. Marco pulled the car into a lot beside a building that might have been a shipping depot once. Now it was just empty space and shadows. Victor Russo's car was already there. Black Mercedes, tinted windows, 2 men standing guard. Lucien checked his watch. 8 p.m. exactly. Ready? He asked Megan. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They got out. The night air was cold, tasting of salt water and decay. Megan's hand drifted toward the gun hidden beneath her jacket. Lucien's hand on her wrist stopped her. Not yet, he said quietly. They crossed the lot. The guards patted them down with brutal efficiency, found the weapons, confiscated them. No weapons, one said in a thick Russian accent. Boss's orders. So they were going in unarmed. Perfect. The warehouse interior was vast and empty except for a single light hanging from the ceiling, illuminating a space where Victor Russo stood waiting. He was older than his photos suggested. 70, maybe. Gray hair, expensive suit, eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. Beside him stood Dmitry Volkov, the enforcer, the one who'd ordered Megan's death, her hands clenched into fists. Moretti, Victor said. His voice was surprisingly soft. Thank you for coming. You said you had information. I do, but first, I think we need to acknowledge the elephant in the room. Victor's gaze shifted to Megan. Mrs. Mercer, or is it Ms. Vale now? It's none of your business, Megan said coldly. Fair enough. Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You've caused quite a bit of trouble for a woman who claims to know nothing about criminal enterprises. I didn't claim anything. I just refused to be used. Yes, I heard about your performance with the FBI. Quite impressive. He turned back to Lucien. She has spirit. I can see why you're protecting her. Get to the point, Lucien said. Who killed Ethan Mercer? Victor's expression hardened. The same person who's been orchestrating this entire war between our organizations. The same person who tipped off the FBI about both our operations. The same person who stands to gain everything if we destroy each other. Who? Victor pulled out his phone, showed them a photo. Megan's blood turned to ice. The photo showed a man in his 50s, silver-haired, familiar. Victor Harrison, Ethan's boss. The senior partner at the law firm. Harrison? Lucien's voice was deadly quiet. He's a corporate lawyer. He's a criminal mastermind who's been playing both our organizations for years. Victor put away his phone. Ethan Mercer wasn't just laundering money for me. He was also embezzling from me, skimming millions into accounts Harrison controlled. When I found out, I was going to kill him. But Harrison got to him first, made it look like my hit, knowing it would bring federal heat down on my organization. Megan's mind reeled. That doesn't make sense. Harrison was at dinner with us. He seemed normal, professional. Victor's laugh was bitter. That's what makes him dangerous. He's been operating in plain sight for 20 years, building connections with law enforcement, cultivating relationships with criminal organizations, positioning himself as the middleman who keeps everyone's secrets. And now he's eliminating the competition, Lucien said slowly. Exactly. With the FBI investigating both our organizations, Harrison steps in as the cleanup crew. He'll absorb what's left of our operations, consolidate power, become untouchable. Victor's expression was carved ice. Unless we stop him. You're proposing an alliance. I'm proposing survival. Harrison has been feeding the FBI information on both of us. He has evidence, recordings, documents that could put us both away for life, unless we take him down first. Lucien was silent for a long moment. And why should I trust you? Because I didn't kill those 3 people in your building. Dimitri here, Victor gestured to his enforcer, was supposed to extract Ms. Vale quietly. The explosion was Harrison's work, made to look like ours, knowing it would force your hand. Dimitri spoke for the first time. I lost men in that explosion too. 4 of my best soldiers sent to watch the building. They died in the fire. 7 people total. 7 lives snuffed out because Victor Harrison wanted to consolidate power. Megan felt rage building in her chest. Hot, clean, purposeful. How do we know you're telling the truth? She asked. Victor smiled. Because I have proof. He pulled out a flash drive. Recordings of Harrison bragging about his plans, financial records showing his embezzlement, phone logs connecting him to the bomber, everything you need to bury him. Why not just kill him yourself? Lucien asked. Because Harrison has insurance. Documents that go public if anything happens to him. He's made himself essential to too many powerful people. Victor's expression was grim. But you have access to the FBI, through Ms. Vale here. She can deliver this evidence. Let the feds do the dirty work. No, Megan said immediately. I'm not working with the FBI. Then Harrison wins, and we all lose. Victor stepped closer. I know what he did to you. Ethan told me before he died, told me how Harrison encouraged him to marry you, to control you, to use you as cover for his criminal activities. You were part of his plan from the beginning. The words hit like physical blows. Her marriage, her abuse, everything she'd suffered. Harrison had orchestrated it? You're lying, she whispered. I wish I was. Victor's voice was almost kind. But Harrison needed Ethan to look stable, legitimate. A wife made him look trustworthy. Your parents' deaths gave him the perfect opportunity, a vulnerable young woman desperate for stability. He introduced you to Ethan, encouraged the relationship, made sure you had nowhere else to turn. Megan's legs almost gave out. Lucien's hand on her arm kept her upright. Why? Her voice broke. Why me? Because you were alone, controllable, the perfect cover. Victor's expression was unreadable. And because Harrison is a monster who doesn't see people as human, just tools to be used and discarded. Lucien took the flash drive. If this is a trap, then we all die. But it's not. Harrison is the enemy here, not each other. Victor extended his hand. Temporary truce. Until he's buried. Lucien studied the offered hand for a long moment. Then he shook it. Temporary, he agreed. And when this is over, we settle our own accounts. Fair enough. They were turning to leave when the warehouse lights exploded. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like lightning. Dimitri went down first, 3 shots to the chest. Victor dove behind a support beam. Lucien grabbed Megan, dragged her behind a concrete pillar as bullets chewed up the floor where they'd been standing. Harrison! Victor shouted over the gunfire. The bastard knew we'd meet. More shots. Marco's voice on the radio. Lucien, we're pinned outside. 8 shooters, professional grade. This wasn't a trap for one of them. It was a trap for all of them. Harrison wanted everyone dead. Russo organization, Moretti organization, witnesses, evidence, everything buried in one night. Lucien pulled out a knife, the only weapon the guards hadn't found, and pressed it into Megan's hands. When I move, you run for the east exit. Don't stop. Don't look back. Lucien, Megan, please. His eyes were desperate. I can't fight if I'm worried about you. Run. She wanted to argue, wanted to stay, wanted to be brave enough to fight beside him, but she was also smart enough to know she'd only get them both killed. Don't die, she whispered, not planning on it. He kissed her then, hard and fast and tasting like goodbye. Then he was gone, moving through the shadows like smoke while gunfire tore apart the warehouse. Megan ran. She made it 20 feet before someone stepped out of the darkness in front of her. Victor Harrison. holding a gun. Smiling like this was all going exactly as planned. "Hello, Megan," he said pleasantly. "I was hoping we'd have a chance to talk." Behind her, the warehouse burned, and Megan realized she was about to find out if she really was as strong as Lucian believed, or if she'd die proving herself wrong. Megan stared at Victor Harrison across 5 feet of concrete and smoke, her hand gripping the knife Lucian had given her so hard her knuckles went white. Harrison looked exactly as he had at Rossi's that night months ago. Silver hair perfectly styled, suit immaculate despite the chaos around them, smile practiced and empty. Like orchestrating mass murder was just another Tuesday. "You set this up," Megan said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. "All of it. From the beginning. I created opportunity." Harrison kept the gun trained on her center mass. "There's a difference. Your parents' death was unfortunate, but convenient. You needed stability. Ethan needed legitimacy. I simply introduced 2 people who could help each other." "He beat me." "Yes, regrettable." Harrison's tone suggested he was discussing bad weather. "But necessary. You had to be controllable. Ethan understood that. He played his role adequately until he got greedy." Behind them, gunfire continued, shouts in Italian and Russian. The warehouse was coming apart. "Why?" Megan's fingers adjusted on the knife handle. "Why go through all this trouble? Because empires aren't built by following rules, my dear. They're built by controlling the people who break them." Harrison gestured with his free hand. "I've spent 20 years positioning myself as the indispensable middleman. The Russos need me to clean their money. The Morettis need me to navigate legal complexities. The FBI needs me as an informant. Everyone needs Victor Harrison." "So you decided to eliminate the competition." "I decided to consolidate power. With Victor and Lucian destroying each other, I step in to pick up the pieces, absorb their operations, become the only game in town." His smile widened. "And you, the tragic widow caught in the crossfire, you were supposed to die in that explosion. A loose end tied up neatly." "But I survived." "You did," which created complications. Harrison's expression hardened. "But I'm a pragmatic man. I can still salvage this. Victor dies here tonight, blamed for the ambush. Lucian dies defending you. You die tragically in the crossfire. The FBI finds evidence implicating both organizations, and I emerge as the cooperative witness who helps them close the case. Except Victor already gave Lucian evidence, recordings, financial records, everything you've done." Harrison laughed. "That flash drive is blank, sweetheart. Victor thought he was being clever, but I've owned his IT infrastructure for 3 years. Every piece of evidence he collected was fed to him by me. Useless." The words hit like ice water. Victor had walked into this meeting with nothing. They'd all walked into a death trap believing they were finally ahead of Harrison's machinations. But they'd never been ahead. Not while once. "You can't win," Megan said desperately. "There are witnesses. Marco, Lucian's men outside, are being eliminated as we speak by professionals I hired months ago." Harrison checked his watch. "In approximately 3 minutes, local police will receive an anonymous tip about a gang war in progress. They'll arrive to find bodies from 3 different criminal organizations. Case closed." He was right. He'd thought of everything, every angle, every contingency. Megan had one chance. One desperate, impossible chance. She had to keep him talking until Lucian could get to them. "What about Ethan?" she asked. "Did you really have him killed?" "I did. Poor bastard thought witness protection meant safety. Didn't realize I have federal marshals on my payroll." Harrison's expression was almost fond. "He served his purpose. Got you isolated, controlled, broken, made you the perfect victim for this narrative." "I was never broken. Weren't you?" Harrison tilted his head. "You called Lucian Moretti from a locked bathroom while your husband tried to beat down the door. You ran straight from one dangerous man to another because you didn't have the strength to save yourself. I had the strength to ask for help." "Semantics." Megan shifted her weight slightly, calculating distances. Harrison was maybe 6 feet away. Old, but his gun hand was steady. She'd have to be fast. Perfect. Lucky. "You know what I think?" she said quietly. "I think you're terrified." Harrison's smile faltered. "Excuse me? You've spent 20 years building this empire of secrets and leverage and control. But it's all fragile. One person stands up to you, one piece of evidence gets away, one witness refuses to cooperate, and everything collapses. Megan took a half step forward. That's why you're here personally instead of letting your hired killers do the work. Because you can't trust anyone else to finish it. Because deep down, you know you're not as untouchable as you pretend. Stay where you are. The gun came up higher. Or what? You'll shoot me? You're going to anyway. Another half step. At least have the courage to look me in the eyes when you do it. Stop hiding behind smiles and manipulation and other people's violence. Harrison's finger tightened on the trigger. Megan lunged, not at him, at the ground, dropping and rolling as the gunshot shattered the air where her chest had been. She came up fast, knife leading, and slashed at his gun hand. The blade connected. Harrison screamed, dropped the weapon. Megan kicked it away and backed up, knife raised, breathing hard. You stupid bitch, Harrison snarled, clutching his bleeding hand. You think this changes anything? You're still going to die here. Maybe, Megan's voice was ice. But you're dying with me. She moved forward. Harrison scrambled backward, fear finally cracking through his composed exterior. Then Lucien was there. He materialized from the smoke like a ghost, grabbed Harrison by the throat, and slammed him against a concrete pillar hard enough to crack bone. Megan, are you hurt? Lucien didn't take his eyes off Harrison. I'm fine. Good. His hand tightened. Harrison's face was turning purple. This is for the 3 people who died in my building. For Curtis Hammond, for Elena Volkov, for Patricia Chen. Lucien, Megan's voice cut through his rage. Don't! He looked at her, surprise flickering across his face. Not like this, she said quietly. He doesn't get to die quick. He doesn't get to escape consequences. She picked up Harrison's dropped gun, checked the magazine. He goes to the FBI. Alive. Talking. Destroying every connection he's built over 20 years. He'll make a deal. Walk away. Not if we give them everything. Megan pulled out her phone, the new one Lucien had given her. Victor said the flash drive was blank, but Harrison just confessed to all of it, and I recorded every word. She hit play. Harrison's voice filled the warehouse, clear and damning. I created opportunity. Your parents' death was unfortunate but convenient. Harrison's expression went from pain to horror. You can't. I can. Megan stopped the recording. And I will. You wanted me broken and controllable. Instead, you taught me exactly how dangerous I could be when I stopped being afraid. Sirens wailed in the distance. Getting closer, Lucien released Harrison, let him drop to the ground, gasping. Marco's bringing the car around. We have maybe 2 minutes before this place is swarming with cops. Then we better move. Megan looked down at Harrison. The FBI will find you here. Bleeding. Surrounded by evidence of your involvement. And they'll have my testimony, this recording, and Victor Russo's cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. You're done. Victor's dead, Harrison spat. I watched Dimitri take 3 bullets. I'm alive. Victor Russo emerged from behind a support beam, blood soaking his shoulder, but very much breathing. And I'm very interested in making a deal with federal prosecutors, especially one that puts you in a cell for the rest of your miserable life. Harrison's face crumbled. All the confidence, the control, the carefully constructed persona shattered. You can't do this, he whispered. I'm untouchable. I have connections, leverage. You have nothing, Lucien said coldly. And now everyone knows it. They left him there. Outside the warehouse district was chaos. Marco had the car running, engines screaming. Police lights strobed in the distance. Bodies littered the parking lot. Harrison's mercenaries mostly, taken down by the combined forces of Russo and Moretti soldiers working together for the first time in decades. Victor limped toward his own vehicle, supported by 2 of his men. He paused beside Lucien's car, met Megan's eyes through the window. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For being stronger than any of us expected. He smiled, tired and genuine. My organization is finished. The FBI will dismantle what's left, but at least Harrison won't profit from it. He walked away into the smoke and sirens. Marco gunned the engine. They disappeared into the night while Red Hook burned behind them. The FBI came for Megan 3 days later. This time, she was ready. She met them in a conference room at the Manhattan field office with Sophia Chen beside her and a recording device on the table between them. Agent Reeves sat across from her, expression unreadable. Ms. Vale, thank you for agreeing to meet. I have information about Victor Harrison, Megan said without preamble, and about the criminal conspiracy he's been running for the past 20 years. Reeves' eyebrows rose. We're listening. Megan talked for 3 hours. She gave them everything: the recording, Harrison's confession, details about Ethan's murder, the warehouse ambush, Victor Russo's willingness to testify. She laid out the entire network Harrison had built, every connection he'd cultivated, every crime he'd orchestrated. When she finished, Reeves looked like someone had handed her a winning lottery ticket. This is, if even half of this is verifiable. It's all verifiable, Sophia interjected, and my client is willing to testify in exchange for complete immunity and protection. From what? From being used as a pawn in your investigation of Lucien Moretti. Sophia's smile was sharp. Ms. Vale was a victim of domestic abuse who sought help from a family friend. That's her story. That's the truth. Anything else is speculation. Reeves studied Megan for a long moment. You understand we could charge you with obstruction, conspiracy, association with known criminals. You could try, Megan agreed, or you could take the biggest case of your career and close it with my cooperation instead of my prosecution. The silence stretched. Finally, Reeves nodded. We'll need detailed statements, depositions, testimony before a grand jury. You'll have it. Megan stood. As long as we're clear that my cooperation ends with Victor Harrison and the evidence I've provided. Nothing else. No one else. Ms. Vale, those are my terms. Another long silence. Then Reeves extended her hand. Deal. They shook on it. Outside the federal building, Sophia turned to Megan with something that might have been respect. You just made a deal with the devil. I've made several lately, Megan said. I'm getting good at it. What happens now? Now I figure out what kind of life I want to build. She walked away from the FBI, from the deals and the testimony, and the weight of everything she'd survived, and got into the car where Lucien was waiting. He didn't ask how it went, just pulled into traffic and drove. They ended up at the Brooklyn bookstore, Angela's place, the one where Megan had remembered how to breathe. Why here? She asked. Because you need to remember who you are, Lucien said, before you decide what comes next. They climbed to the 3rd floor, sat in the poetry section surrounded by dust and forgotten words. Rain tapped against the windows. Harrison's in custody, Lucien said quietly, charged with conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, obstruction of justice. 53 counts total. The DA says he'll die in prison. Good. Victor's cooperating. His organization is done. Most of his people are taking deals. And you? Lucien was quiet for a moment. The FBI doesn't have enough evidence to move on me. Thanks to you, but they're watching, waiting. I can't operate the way I used to. So what will you do? Go legitimate. Actually legitimate, not the pretend version I've been running. He looked at her. I've been building legal businesses for years. Real estate, investments, security consulting. I can walk away from the criminal side, if I want to. Do you want to? I don't know. His honesty was unexpected. This life, it's all I've known since my father died. The power, the fear, the control. Giving that up means becoming someone different, someone smaller. Or someone better. He smiled sad and small. Maybe. They sat in silence, listening to rain and the distant sound of the city that had tried to destroy them both. What about us? Megan asked finally. The question she'd been avoiding for weeks. What do you want there to be? I don't know. She pulled a book from the shelf randomly. Poetry. Always poetry. You saved me. Multiple times. I'm grateful. But I don't know if what I feel is love or just survival instinct. Attachment to the person who pulled me out of hell. That's fair. You say you love me, but you also barely know me. The real me. Not the broken victim or the woman you had to protect. Just me. Lucien reached over, took the book from her hands, read the spine. Sylvia Plath. Dark choice. My mother loved her. Tell me about your mother." So she did. Megan talked for an hour about her parents, their chaotic academic household, the debates over dinner, the way her mother would quote poetry at inappropriate moments, and her father would respond with philosophy. She talked about losing them, about the grief that had made her vulnerable to Ethan, about the woman she'd been before tragedy reshaped her. Lucien listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "Your mother sounds like she would have hated me." "Probably," Megan smiled. "But she also would have appreciated that you asked. I want to know you, the real you, not the version shaped by trauma or survival." His voice was careful. "But I also understand if you need space, time, distance from everything that happened. What I need," Megan said slowly, "is to figure out who I am without anyone else defining it. Not Ethan, not Harrison, not even you." "Okay. But I also don't want to lose you completely. She struggled for words. "You're the first person in years who's seen me as someone worth knowing instead of someone worth controlling. Then we'll figure it out. Together, separately. However you need it to be." Megan looked at him, this dangerous man who'd killed for her, risked everything for her, and was now offering to let her go if that's what she needed. "I'm going back to school," she said, "finishing my literature degree, getting my own apartment, building a life that's mine." "Good. And you're going to stay in my life, but not as my protector or my savior or my whatever we've been to each other these past months." "Then what?" "I don't know yet." Megan's smile was small but real. "Maybe we start over. Meet as equals instead of victim and rescuer. See what happens when the crisis is over and we're just two people trying to figure out life." Lucien considered this. Then he stood, offered his hand formally. "Hi, I'm Lucien Moretti. I used to run a criminal organization. Now I'm trying to figure out what comes next." Megan took his hand, felt the warmth of it, the strength. "I'm Megan Vale. I survived an abusive marriage and a crime war. Now I'm trying to remember what it feels like to just exist." "Nice to meet you, Megan Vale." "Nice to meet you too." They shook hands like strangers, like people meeting for the first time, like two humans standing at the beginning of something instead of the wreckage of everything. And in that moment, Megan understood something fundamental. She'd spent 3 years being possessed by Ethan's violence, then months being protected by Lucien's power. Now, finally, she was learning what it meant to possess herself. 6 months later, Megan stood in the hallway of NYU's literature department, arms full of textbooks, listening to a professor explain her thesis requirements. She'd re-enrolled in January, declared her concentration in contemporary poetry, started actually living instead of just surviving. Her apartment was small, a studio in the East Village that cost too much, and had a radiator that clanked like someone was murdering the pipes. But it was hers. She paid rent with money from the translation work she'd started doing again. Built a life from nothing but will and words. Harrison had been convicted on 47 of 53 counts, sentenced to life without parole. His empire had crumbled. His connections had scattered. He'd died the way he'd lived, alone, grasping for control that no longer existed. Victor Russo had gotten 15 years in a plea deal. His organization was dissolved. The FBI considered it a major victory. Ethan was buried in a cemetery in Connecticut. Megan hadn't gone to the funeral. And Lucien had kept his word. He'd gone legitimate, sold off the questionable businesses, focused on real estate and security consulting. They still saw each other, coffee once a week, dinners when their schedules aligned, long walks through the city where they talked about books and life and everything except what they'd survived together. They hadn't slept together, hadn't kissed since that night in the warehouse, were carefully, deliberately building something new from the ashes of trauma. Megan didn't know if it would work, didn't know if love could exist between two people who'd met in hell and dragged each other to safety. But she was willing to find out. Her phone buzzed, a text from Lucien. "Finished with class?" She smiled, typed back, "Just meeting Angela at the bookstore in an hour. Want company?" "Always." She grabbed her coat and headed out into the spring afternoon. The city was alive with possibility. Street vendors and tourists and students rushing to classes. Megan joined the flow, just another person building a life in New York. At the bookstore, Angela greeted her with a hug and fresh coffee. Lucien arrived 10 minutes later, carrying a bag from the pastry shop down the street. Cannoli, he said, setting it on the counter. Angela mentioned you've been craving them. You didn't have to. I wanted to. They climbed to the third floor, settled into their usual spots surrounded by poetry. Megan pulled out her notebook. She'd started writing again, processing everything through words the way her mother had taught her. How's the thesis coming? Lucien asked. Slowly. I'm writing about trauma narratives in contemporary women's poetry, trying to understand how language shapes survival. Sounds heavy. It is. She looked at him. But also necessary. I need to make sense of what happened, turn it into something that means something beyond just pain. Lucien was quiet for a moment. I read something recently about how the opposite of trauma isn't peace, it's agency. The ability to make choices that matter. Where'd you read that? Therapy, actually. I've been going, trying to figure out who I am without the violence. Megan set down her pen. How's that going? It's hard. Turns out I built my entire identity around being dangerous. Take that away and I'm just... He shrugged. Some guy trying to figure out what comes next. Join the club. They sat in comfortable silence, rain starting to tap against the windows. The bookstore cat appeared, wound between their feet, purred like a small engine. I'm glad we did this, Megan said finally, starting over, taking it slow. Me too. I'm not sure where it's going. That's okay. I'm not either. Lucien looked at her with those dark eyes that had first seen through every lie she'd told herself. But I know I want you in my life, however that looks. Even if it's just this, coffee and bookstores and being friends who survived impossible things together. Even then. Megan reached across the space between them, took his hand. Not romantic, just human connection. Two people who'd walked through fire and chosen to keep walking after. Thank you, she said quietly. For that night at Rossi's. For seeing me when I'd forgotten how to see myself. Thank you for calling, for being brave enough to want more than survival. They sat together while the rain fell and the city moved outside, and somewhere in the distance, life continued in all its messy, complicated glory. Megan Vale had been many things: daughter, orphan, wife, victim, survivor, student, writer. She'd been possessed by violence and rescued by danger and almost destroyed by men who thought they owned her. But now, sitting in a bookstore with poetry on the shelves and possibility in her chest, and a hand holding hers without demanding anything in return, she was finally, completely, impossibly herself. And that, she was learning, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Opit. Years later, people would ask Megan how she survived, how she walked away from abuse, from organized crime, from federal investigations and warehouse shootouts, and men who thought women were property. She'd smile and give the simple answer, I asked for help. But the truth was more complicated. The truth was she'd learned that strength wasn't about never being broken. It was about choosing to rebuild. That freedom wasn't given, it was taken, piece by piece, choice by choice, breath by breath. The truth was she'd discovered that love could exist in darkness if you were brave enough to see it. That dangerous men could be gentle, and gentle men could be dangerous, and sometimes the person who saved you was also the person who taught you to save yourself. The truth was, she'd survived because she decided survival mattered more than safety. Because she'd called a stranger's number in a moment of desperation and found someone who looked at her broken pieces and saw a person worth knowing. But mostly, the truth was simple. Megan Vale survived because she wanted to. And in the end, that was the only reason that mattered. The rain hammered against Rossi's windows, just like it had that first night. But inside, the restaurant glowed warm and safe and full of people living their complicated lives. At a corner table sat a woman in her 30s with a literature textbook and a glass of wine. Across from her sat a man in a dark suit who'd learned to smile with his eyes instead of hiding behind them. They were discussing poetry, debating the meaning of a Neruda verse, laughing over shared memories. To anyone watching, they looked like what they were. Two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided to build something new from the remains. Not perfect, not easy, just real. And outside, thunder rolled across Manhattan, while the city that had tried to destroy them both kept spinning, kept breathing, kept offering second chances to anyone brave enough to take them. Megan reached across the white tablecloth and intertwined her fingers with Lucien's. Not because she needed saving, not because she was afraid, but because she chose to. And finally, she understood the difference between being possessed and being loved, between surviving and living, between the woman she'd been and the woman she'd become. "You know," Megan said softly, echoing words from another lifetime, "this is where everything changed." Lucian studied her with the same intensity that had once frightened her but now felt like coming home. "No," he said quietly, squeezing her hand. "This is where your life began." And somewhere deep in her chest, in the places that had been broken and rebuilt and broken again, Megan felt something settle. Not peace, not yet, but possibility. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, that was enough.